Yeah, hi friends, welcome to Recreation Technologies. Today we are going to discuss about JavaScript semicolons, like what is the need of JavaScript and what is the advantages of using semicolon inside the JavaScript. So in our day-to-day life we used to write so many JavaScript codes and we used to write so many lines of JavaScript codes, but also we use those semicolons at the end of each statements, but we really don't know what is the exact use of those semicolons. So I am going to explain you in detail. So like when we write multiple lines of codes, to separate those lines of codes we usually use that semicolon. So when we add that semicolon at the end of the statements, it separates one line from another by using that semicolon. But let's say if we just want to write all the lines of code in one single line, then it is very difficult for the compiler to understand whether you are writing multiple lines of codes in the same line. And to differentiate that, if we add a semicolon at the end of each line, then compiler will easy to understand whether that's a single, that's a multiple lines of codes are there or that's a single line of codes. So let me show you with example like how it looks like. So let me first create few of the variables like where x comma y comma z. So I just created three variables like x, y and z. So these things are fine. Even if I can create like this also, like where x, then where y, then where z also. So I can create like this also. But let's say I want to create in the other way, like x, then y, then z. So as I am adding a comma separator here, so it is going to create three variables. Now let me assign the values into it. Let's say x equal to 10, now y equal to 20, now z equal to 30. So now here you can see we are getting few compilation errors. Like, so if I hover the mouse over the y or z, now you can see here the semicolon is expected. The reason why we are getting such type of errors is because we are assigning the values into those variables. So when we assign 10 values into the variables, which is absolutely fine, but after that we are assigning a 20 values into the y variable and 30 values into the z variable. But here you can see in one line we added all those values inside the variables, and as you can see here we didn't added any semicolons after those values into the variables, and due to that reason it is showing those errors. So let's say if I am going to add semicolon, then those errors will going to remove it. Now there is other way which we can assign the variables. Like I can do like this, like each assigning all the values into the variables in the separate line. This is going to work fine. Like here you can see there is no errors or nothing is there. But let's say if I am going to write everything in the same line, so in that case you are going to see those compilation errors. So for that we need to just add the semicolon at the end of the each line, because the compiler is going to confuse whether in that single line multiple lines of codes are there or just a single line of codes are there. So here in this case, now the compiler is getting confused that we are assigning multiple values into multiple variables, that we know, but compiler does not know that we are assigning 10 values into the x variable and 20 values into the y variable and 30 values into the z variable. We are going to explain you to the compiler with the semicolon. We are assigning those three values into the three variable, and that is the reason we need to use the semicolon at the end of each line. But if we are going to like assign those values in different line, then those semicolons are not required. So now here you can see there is no such type of errors does exist. And if you see the modern browsers, and so these things are also supported. And when we are writing the code inside the web project, do like this, like that. So they don't use semicolons at the end of each statement. But if you are going to use in a separate line, that is absolutely fine. But if you are going to write all the codes in a single line, then obviously you need to use the semicolons, otherwise it directly throw you that error which I showed you recently. But it is highly recommended to use the semicolon, because the compiler is not going to get confused like which statement is the end of which statements. So the compiler will automatically understand that. So here you can see like x is a variable and which is assigning 10 values into it, and y is another variable, and z is another variable and which contains 20 and 30 values into it. And it is always highly recommended to use the semicolons at the end of each statements. So this is all about today's video. Thank you. Please like and subscribe to our channel.